Hello everyone, my name is Callie McBride and today I'm going to be talking about Lycaon pictus, the African painted dog, also known as the African wild dog. The first thing you'll notice about these animals is they have a distinct orange, black, and white coat. And these patterns are unique to each individual dog. No two dogs are the same, so it's like a human fingerprint. And they have noticeably large bat-like ears, excellent sense of hearing, and they are the only extant member of their genus Lycaon. As for the stats, nothing too dramatic with sexual dimorphism. They're about 30 to 43 inches long from snout to the base of the tail, and 24 to 30 inches in height, shoulder height, and they average between 40 to 79 pounds. The source of their scientific name comes from Greek Lycaos, meaning wolf-like, and pictus, Latin for painted. And they have been listed as endangered by the IUCN since 1990. These guys are class Mammalia. They produce milk as all other mammals do. Order Carnivora. They are hypercarnivorous, in fact. And they come from a very old branch of the Canidae family. They diverged genetically 1.7 million years ago, although the species proper is believed to have emerged in the Middle Pleistocene. It's very likely they could have butted heads with Homo erectus. Their closest relative would be the dhole, and there is evidence of some genetic admixing between the two lineages a very long time ago, again in the Pleistocene, when their ranges would have overlapped. But otherwise, they are so genetically isolated from all other modern canids, there's no chance of interbreeding or hybridization. Part of why their genetic diversity is extra, it's extra important to take care of their genetic diversity. In 1820, a naturalist mistakenly identified them as a member of the hyena family, or as a hyena, and it's probably because of they do have some superficial similarities, the rounded ears, the shortened faces, but it was later corrected as indicated by the updated scientific name. And speaking of names, I just figured it would be some fun trivia to include their Swahili name, Mwamwitu, and Isikosa, which is Ikwili. It's just some fun little trivia for y'all. This is just an uncropped view, a better view of the phylogenetic tree from the previous slide. If you direct your attention to the graphic on the right, you can see the African painted dog used to roam most of the African continent, very widespread, north to south. But today they are reduced to a fraction of their former range, and they're scattered all over into different subpopulations. This map of Africa is to illustrate the dog's range via their habitat. They do not live in the really dry desert such as the Sahara, and they don't live in dense rainforests such as the Congo. African wild dogs are pursuit predators and they wander a very wide territory daily in search of food. So they tend to favor savanna, scrubland, semi-arid to arid. They prefer the open plains, open flat land. Although there have been subpopulations found in the Ethiopian Bale Mountains and on Mount Kilimanjaro. So they're not necessarily limited, they just prefer flat open ground. You think of Africa, you're probably thinking some thorn trees over the savanna, which makes sense because it's a biome that covers over half of the entire continent. We have, the Serengeti and the Okavango Delta are a couple of examples. It is a transitional land between grassland and desert or grassland and forest. You're going to find a lot of shrubs, scrub cover, some trees spread out very thin. It gets seasonal rainfall, and they can experience very dry seasons, which leaves them vulnerable to bushfires, either natural or intentionally set. Agriculture and roads also break up and threaten most of this biome, and also, as will be discussed later, also threatens the African wild dogs that live there. This species is a cursorial pursuit predator. Though they can run up to 40 miles an hour, the focus isn't so much on outrunning the prey as outlasting them with superior stamina. If possible, they will utilize water or other obstacles to cut off or otherwise trap their quarry. They quite literally hound their prey, biting it on the legs and belly, even disemboweling it until the animal can no longer run and succumbs to shock and blood loss. Unlike big cats, the dogs lack a killing neck bite, and they'll start consuming their unfortunate victim while it still clings to life. They prefer medium-sized antelope, such as the unlucky greater kudu in the photo, but also pursue impala and wildebeest. If the pack is big enough, painted dogs will chase after Cape buffalo and zebra. Small animals are not off the menu, as they also take spring hare and warthog. To aid them in their chasing lifestyle, African wild dogs have lost the dew claws in their forelegs, 4 toes on the front to improve the efficiency of their stride and speed. Their skeletons are light and graceful to carry them swiftly across the savanna. Their dentition includes the second largest premolars in relation to body size, outmatched only by the hyena, to aid in devouring their hypercarnivorous diet. I just wanted to illustrate the difference in the dentition of the African wild dog and, say, a gray wolf. Well, first of all, you notice the wolf's skull is longer and the wild dog's skull is shorter, more stout. And you can see by the red circles just the difference in those carnassial molars. They're very large, and the African wild dog doesn't have any more molars after that, whereas the wolf does. So they got some choppers on them. They definitely got some choppers on them. Fun fact number 1, these dogs are wildly successful hunters compared to other large predators in their range. They can range from 60 to 90% success rate. They average around 80%. And if you compare that with the bigger, more charismatic predators like lions and hyenas, they only have a 30% success rate in their predation attempts. And those two species will often drive African wild dogs off their kills. Fun fact number 2, African wild dogs have a voting system. Democracy is not strictly the realm of Homo sapiens. They exhibit very intelligent group, collective decision making. The wild dogs can be, sitting around and one might decide we should go hunting, and they will forcefully exhale through their nose a sneeze, and depending on the amount of votes they get, they will either stay or move on to go hunting. Now, even though their society, their hierarchy is not as strict as, say, something like a wolf, they still do have a hierarchy. The dominant pair, if one of the dominant pair decides I don't want to go right now, it'll take more sneezes to outweigh their lack of sneeze, if that makes sense. Now, I will be including a link in the description of this video to another video of them demonstrating this behavior. It's very soft, but you can definitely hear the dogs sneezing. So they're in the middle of a vote on whether or not they should go hunt. Fun fact number 3, these animals have the largest litter size of any canid, ranging from 2 to 20 pups. Normally, only the dominant pair breeds, but the entire pack has a role in raising the cubs. For additional safety, they will utilize dens or termite mounds dug out by aardvark or warthogs to hide their cubs in. And when the rest of the pack goes out on a hunt, a few adults stay behind to babysit and protect the cubs, and they receive regurgitated meat alongside the cubs when the pack returns from a successful hunt. The greatest threat today for the African wild dog is habitat fragmentation. And this habitat fragmentation is mostly due to agriculture. A lot of savannas are suffering from fragmentation due to farming. As mentioned earlier, the dogs wander a wide territory in search of food, and their actual population density is quite low because of their broad territories. When it's time to break up the pack or go find a new pack, the females will leave the natal pack to find other individuals to join and breed with. The fragmentation disrupts their ability to hunt properly and to disperse properly and reach other populations, other packs of African wild dogs. Agriculture and farming not only fragment the landscape, but they bring other tensions to the local wildlife. They draw water and resources away from the dogs and their prey. Sometimes African wild dogs do take livestock, but more often than not, they are blamed for killings by leopards, lions, and hyenas. Regardless, the result is the same. It usually results in indiscriminate poisoning, which kills African wild dogs, lions, and leaches into the surrounding ecosystem. So it's not necessarily just the predators who are affected. The picture to the right is a cow that was confirmed to be taken by African wild dogs. As the farms and ranches continue to spread, more human-wildlife conflict is bound to occur. You all may be familiar with the canine distemper virus. It is a conservation nightmare for many, many other species. Domestic dogs, as they have spread worldwide alongside with humans, have thus introduced it to all kinds of native wildlife all over the world as well. In particular, it causes problems for carnivore species. It has caused a decline in the wild lion populations in Africa, and its threat hangs just as heavily over the African wild dog. The images in the upper left hand show a wild dog suffering typical symptoms of distemper, mucopurulent nasal and ocular discharge, and weight loss. Distemper tends to attack the respiratory, gastrointestinal, and central nervous system. It's a highly virulent disease with a high morbidity and a high mortality rate to the unvaccinated populations. Rabies is always a threat when you're dealing with just about any mammal, and occasionally anthrax has reared its ugly head to threaten the wild dog as well. It's difficult to control diseases like distemper in wild populations because one vaccine doesn't necessarily work in all species. In fact, special veterinary research had to be done to figure out an effective vaccine and schedule for the painted dogs. You can see a couple of scientists working with an African wild dog in the lower left, and that was taken at Lulue Imfolozi Game Reserve. But either way, it's difficult to get these diseases under control. As of 2020, the IUCN estimates there are 6,000 African painted dogs left in the wild, scattered into 39 subpopulations. Of that number, 1,400 individuals are considered mature and able to breed. They have not yet reached a critical point in that they are just endangered and not critically endangered. And if the study this graph from is any indication, these animals can bounce back from relatively small populations in a short period of time given the chance. Currently, 200 animals are held in AZA facilities. However, a solid safe plan was only established in 2021, and thus many SSPs are still relatively new on our end. Even if the AZA has only just begun its conservation efforts with captive wild dogs, efforts in their home continent have been ongoing for years before. For example, the African Wildlife Foundation organizes in situ efforts, such as its scouts in the Samburu region in Kenya. The Samburu people there are traditional pastoralists, herding livestock from place to place, which, of course, sets the stage for potential human-wildlife conflict with the painted dogs, among other predators, potential wildlife killings, and potential human injury. With funding from the Agency of International Development, the U.S., and the Dutch government, these scouts collar wild dogs and track their movements. When they might get too close to a human settlement, intervention can be staged before either the people or the dogs can come to harm. They also educate the locals about the importance of caring for and protecting their native wildlife. They help them to build better mobile bomas to better protect their livestock against predators and prevent retaliation on already vulnerable species. The people also come to appreciate the ecotourism and money their native wildlife can bring, as opposed to livestock losses. Wildlife Now, an extension of the original George Adamson Wildlife Preservation Trust, organizes both in situ and ex situ conservation efforts for endangered species such as black rhino, elephants, and, of course, wild dogs. The Mkomazi Project, begun in 1995, set to establish captive breeding facilities for the wild dogs in preparation for eventual reintroduction. They reduce mortality of captive bred animals by placing them with wild individuals that have dispersed from their natal packs to form new ones. They also funded integral veterinary research to successfully inoculate the animals from diseases such as rabies and canine distemper mentioned earlier. Together with the Tanzanian Parks Authority, they restore habitat and establish wildlife reserves for ecotourism to help their parks flourish, and in turn, their animals. This concludes my presentation on Lycaon pictus, the painted wolf of Africa. I hope I've helped you gain an appreciation for this remarkable and unique predator, and a desire to help the various humanitarian and wildlife efforts in equally remarkable Africa. African wild dog, truly a dog of a different color.